the Teach Pitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for Teach Pitch, a global community of tens of thousands of subscribers from over 205 countries who all have a desire to improve the state of education in this world. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of our subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, fashion designers, hospital builders, non-profit founders, authors, journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That is what we are going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo de Pap and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us in this journey. So sit back, relax and download the podcast here.
When a young person sees another young person actively participating in peace building and you see how they are being recognized, they feel like they would also want to leave the guns and join the peace.
A very happy Thursday, everyone. We are Thursday, April 21st. And it's such a great pleasure to be back here with yet another episode. And this week we have someone very interesting, slightly different topic to what we've had before, but nonetheless extremely interesting. We've had this interview for a while. The interview was recorded in December while I was in Doha in Qatar for the World Innovation Summit for Education. And we had shelved it for a little while, not because it's not interesting, but more because we didn't necessarily know how to contextualize it among all the other interviews that we had had. So the person that we're talking to here today is a young lady by the name of Sharon Epie. And Sharon is a young peace builder. She's an advocate. She works with an organization in Cameroon. And this organization has a very diligent approach towards identifying conflict and then also speaking about the conflict so they can bring it to a resolution, specifically from a youth perspective. And this is what I think is so interesting about this. So I've met Sharon. We were introduced to each other by an organization also active in Qatar. That organization is called Education Above All. And as the name already discloses it, this organization is very focused on improving the global state of education. And they have a very kind of hands-on approach through providing resources, through training teachers, but also they have a very advocacy policy approach to it through a very strong youth advocacy program. And Sharon is a concrete example of that youth advocacy program. What youth advocacy means is basically allowing the next generation to speak about how a conflict impacts them every step of the way. And it might sound obvious, but it isn't really, because if you look at how conflict is worded these days in the news, in the newspapers, it's often through the eyes of a politician or someone working for the Defense Department or someone, involved with the army, but it's not necessarily someone looking at it with the eyes of the future, looking at it with the eyes of, okay, here is the burden that you are giving me now because of this conflict. And this is also why we're launching this interview now, because there are so many conflicts ongoing, sadly, very, very sadly at this moment in this world, that it's about time we also give the proper time and attention to the people who are impacted the most by this. And that is really the next generation. And I don't only mean that from a very catastrophic, tormenting approach. That is horrific and awful enough, whereby you see horrific images of families being torn apart, innocent civilians being shot, kind of all those awful images that we see coming out of Ukraine. I also mean that from kind of the fact that certain people will be deprived of an education. Just an entire generation is just deprived of normal primary or secondary education because there are other fish to fry in that country. They will be deprived of a normal habitat, because all houses are destroyed. So how are you going to rebuild houses? How are you going to make sure everyone has a roof over their head? Thinking about things like eating, like drinking, kind of all the basics are just gone and have heavily impacted, again, an entire generation, has impacted the youth. Taking Afghanistan as an example, whereby we're talking about stagnating education for girls. What's going on in Afghanistan at this moment? Are girls still entitled to have an education? Are they deprived? What is the status of that? And how is this going to further evolve? Now, I think the strongest way of conveying to someone what the impact is letting the youth speak. And that is very much what Sharon symbolizes. So Cameroon has been impacted by a civil war. There's a conflict ongoing in Cameroon. Sharon is impacted by that conflict, and she speaks hands-on how she was impacted, but very strongly, very fiercely, she also approaches this with, here are the solutions. Here are new policy decisions we need to put in place to prevent of this happening again, and to make sure that we protect the next generation to an optimal extent. So I hope you give this interview your full consideration. I hope you listen to it very thoughtfully. If you want to know more about Education Above All, you can go to their website. It's educationaboveall, just all one word, .org. And then I would highly recommend the sections on their youth advocacy program, where Sharon is a concrete example. So I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode. Sharon Epie, the Peace Builder.
We are so happy to be partnering with Hee Ha Ho, an interactive video platform that enables teachers and students to easily create amazing clickable videos for learning. Check out heehaho.com for more information and your free starter account. A big thanks to our friends at CZeus Maths Challenger, the only puzzle that effectively boosts your numeracy, critical thinking, and brain power. Go to czeuspunzles.com to get your brain buzzing. And we're so excited to be working with the team at Learning Ladders, the only platform that provides assessment that goes way beyond tracking to effectively support teaching and learning for EYFS, primary, and secondary settings. Go to learningladders.info to find out more.
Good afternoon, still here in Doha and still talking to so many inspiring people here at the World Innovation Summit for Education. And I really cannot believe the quality and the potential of all the people that I meet here. And one of those people I'm very fortunate to have here next to me today is Sharon Epie. And Sharon is currently program lead for the organization Local Youth Corner based in Cameroon. And Local Youth Corner is a youth-led peace-building organization that was founded in 2002 that focuses on promoting youth inclusion in peace building and countering violent extremism. And Sharon, I think you are very much an example, a concrete example of when we're talking about unmuting the next generation to make sure they are involved in our decision making, not necessarily on the level of education, although I do think that's also a component there, but more importantly on the level of peace building. So very warm welcome to you. I'm very happy you could be here.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here as well, and given the opportunity to talk to a global platform and a global group of people. I think that it's a reflection of generational mute actually.
Yeah, well, that's really what I was hoping for. So I would like to talk a little bit more about the vital work you are currently doing, specifically in Cameroon. First of all, let's start with what brought you here to Doha. So you are invited by Education Above All, which is a partner organization of the Qatar Foundation and of WISE, and they invited you to come over and speak. Is that correct?
Yes, so I was invited as a key speaker for the platform or for the session on strengthening collaboration, intergenerational collaboration towards the Youth Peace and Security Agenda. That's the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, which was established in 2015, and to show how at our level in Cameroon, we've been able to start the process of developing a national action plan, and what are some of the learnings that we've gotten from the field and how these can be able to inform learning across the region of Africa.
Yeah. And by we, you mean the next generation?
Yes,
you
the
mean
next
youth.
generation.
Yeah.
Yes, the young people who are currently actively participating in peace building processes. Because, for instance, in Cameroon, we have over 300 civil society organizations, and among them, more than three-quarters are youth-led, or young people are actively participating within those organizations. So you realize that for us to be able to work effectively, we should be able to have a plan that we can actually track our efforts and be heard and actually, be more informed. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did the plenary go? How did your panel go?
Oh, yeah. So in October, most recently, we had a national symposium on localizing the African Union Continental Framework on Youth, Peace and Security.
Mm-hmm.
And during this program, we mobilized over 100 young people from across the 10 regions of Cameroon, where we brought them together to discuss on some of the key issues that should be reflected within the National Action Plan.
Yeah.
And through this platform or through this symposium, we realized that there are a lot of young people who really want to do a lot of work, but they are faced with a lot of challenges such as access, for instance, those who are working in communities that do not probably have media, do not have the resources and everything. They are not really having the opportunities to meaningfully contribute and be heard, even though they are the most affected. So we also realized that a lot of young people are at the crossroad of this violence. For instance, in Cameroon, more than three-quarters of those who are fighting in the bushes are young people. They are the ones who are being recruited. They are the ones who are being radicalized. But at the same time, there are also a lot of young people who are contributing to transforming violent extremism by talking to their peers and telling them that violence, extremism, conflict doesn't help you. It causes more destruction, and these are alternatives. We can be able to engage in social entrepreneurship to be able to find solutions. Because when we talk to them and we realize that they'll complain about unemployment, poverty, you have to find a way to survive, and then you go and join violent extremist groups and all of that. But we show them the alternatives. When a young person sees another young person actively participating in peace building and you see how they are being recognized, they feel like they would also want to leave the guns and join the peace. Yeah, because we are seeing more opportunities. Yeah. So, those are some of the things that we discussed at the level of that platform. And we also tried to say that, okay, we're going to come up with a roadmap with key action points, which could be able to lead us into developing a 5-year action plan to be able to work with government, with local organizations, and even with international organizations, focus on what young people want and not based on what they are telling us that we need and so on. Yes.
Yeah. So you're really creating a narrative and a voice for the youth. So thereby creating a range of options, not necessarily by default choosing for conflict, but also choosing for peace building. You want to show them that is a viable option.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because the narrative is always, as I said initially, we don't have opportunities. We are marginalized. We are pushed aside and so on and so forth. But those are opportunities for us to show that young people are actually valuable. Yeah. I remember there was a time when we were having community dialogues, because we usually do improbable dialogues at community levels where we invite the military, we invite gendarmes, we invite religious leaders, traditional leaders together to have discussions on how they can be able to work together and contribute meaningfully to peace building at community level, especially for conflict-affected communities by Boko Haram in the far north region, for instance. And during this session, one of the old men came to me and said, I never knew young people can organize something like this and, really teach us how we can be able to find common grounds to build peace. So we realized that we as young people, we realize that we are challenged, but we can also use those challenges and transform them into opportunities to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is what we really want the national action plan to be about, to be able to show other young people, because as days go by, the conflicts in the northwest, southwest region of Cameroon, for instance, and in the far north region keeps growing more and more.
Yeah.
And we keep seeing a lot more of young people getting more and more radicalized due to the effects and everything. But at the end of the day, we just have to keep working and building the pieces of peace as much as we can be able to. Yes.
Lots of passion there, and justifiably so. And I love the power you put into it. You started with your organization at the age of 20 as a volunteer, and you're now almost 25, and you became a program lead. So you're growing with the organization as well. What made you interested in this?
Well, what actually made me interested in peace building was the issue that I faced when I was in university. I remember when the crisis in the northwest southwest region started, and I saw my peers running in and gunshots and all of that, and I was very confused, and I was like, what happened? And they told me that there is a conflict, and the police are chasing the youth are fighting against the police, and I just had to go in there and hide. And it actually affected my education, because at that point I had some issues in school which I had to follow for 3 months, something that was supposed to be for 2 days, And then I attended some sort of seminar which was organized by the organization where I work for now, Local Youth Corner Cameroon, and they were talking about youth radicalization and the effects of conflict and violent extremism. And I looked back at what I had experienced in the university during that period, and I was like, I need to be able to contribute, to reduce this violence and reduce these radicalizations. And then I opted to volunteer with them. And I remember my first activity that I did was actually using comedy for peace, where we mobilized IDPs who had abandoned their houses, they've been suffering. We brought them together for them to listen to comedians and humor and just have a good time and just, build themselves and feel better. So that was the first, and seeing how happy they were being in that space really inspired me that, okay, fine, this isn't much. You're not solving the problem 100%, but at least you're giving hope to people. And, little by little, that's how I started working and giving in my all. And today I'm really happy that even though we haven't solved the problem 100, because peace building is not about going to a community and just setting all the puzzles straight. It's about the little things that you do to be able to get to the bigger goal, which is peace at the end of the day. So that's my little story. And no matter where I am, whether in Local Youth Corner or any other organization, it's really about serving the community and providing better alternatives to violent extremism. Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was thinking a couple of things. First of all, for people who do not know a lot about the conflict in Cameroon, can you explain a little bit what the Northwest-Southwest crisis is about? Because it is a violent conflict. We're not calling it a war, but there is definitely something going on there which is violent. Is it still ongoing, or what is the situation to date?
Yeah, well, it's ongoing, and there are so many different narratives around the conflict in the Northwest Southwest region, and unfortunately everyone feels like they're correct. But at this point, I feel that the main cause of the continuous violence is the blame game. The government blaming the youth, the community, the young people, and the young people blaming the government. And at the end of the day, those who are most affected, those who are suffering the most till now, are the children, are the young people, are the women who are within those communities. So the conflict started since 2016, and through initial advocacies, on ensuring equal opportunities between Anglophones and Francophones. And then it later on escalated into what we are seeing today as extreme violence or extreme violent extremism. And you see a lot of those who are the key actors are young people and government. So we realize that there is a need to create platforms where these two can be able to understand each other and find alternatives which are not necessarily violent or radicalization.
And in preparation for this interview, you said that the 2016 conflict, it started in 2016. There was really a significant difference in how the youth was involved with this time. What do you think made that difference? Why was youth more involved with this specific conflict than with others? Or what gave youth a voice at that moment in time?
Well, I feel that initially, Cameroon has always been seen as a more peaceful nation among several other African, because we have South Sudan by the side, we have Somalia, we have Central Africa, which have been facing war and violence for so many years now. And Cameroon has been relatively peaceful compared to those, even though we had the Boko Haram crisis that started sometime 2013, 2014. But then in 2016, this is a new crisis that's beginning. And a lot of those who are active are the youths. They are the ones who are radicalized. They are the ones who are going down there. And for me, I feel that the fact that young people were at this crossroad was one of the reasons why they are becoming more and more engaged, or more and more into peace building. And I also feel that the international community, as we spoke about the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, which recognizes the role of young people, the meaningful participation of young people, I think advocacies around such policies, such global policies, have equally contributed to improving the participation of young people in peace building or in peace building processes. At the same time, I think that the media is also contributing enormously to how young people are, because now when you feel heard, when you feel like your work is being seen and appreciated, it encourages other young people to want to be part of, such a narrative. So I feel that all of these things have actually, like putting young people on the map and help them to be able to meaningfully participate even more. I think that, and it's also around resilience.
When you say media, do you also mean social media? Has social media played a role in this as well, to get the youth more involved and to give them a voice?
Absolutely. I mean, we are in the media world, and even though there are a lot of communities that do not have access to the media, but the media affects a lot of what is happening on the ground. A lot of fake news, a lot of hate speech, which affects the way people respond to conflicts, and everything. And I feel that the single fact that a young person can be able to tweet, for instance, and tweet about peace, and you have a retweet from maybe the United Nations, those are some of the things that trigger their will to contribute. That's just the fact. Initially, young people did not really have platforms like this where they can actually be able to talk about their work. When you're not being recognized, when it feels like you're just doing and nobody ever sees you or nobody ever hears you, it kind of breaks you and doesn't really push you to want to really contribute meaningfully at the same time. So the media has really played a key role. But it doesn't mean that everything is fine. I mean, we need more of those opportunities. We need more of those way of access. We need more access, to opportunities, to
those things.
To those things.
And talking about platforms, I just wanted to do a shout out here for the Global Youth Peace Conference, which is organized by the UN Envoy and their partners. And it will be organized in Qatar, Finland, and Colombia. They are the co-hosts of this particular conference on peace building. And that will take place in this year, or is it next year?
It's next year.
Next year.
Yes.
So that is basically, this is all in the run up to that conference. Which again, it's a bigger attempt to involve youth in the peace building process. And
Yes.
Cameroon and your story, Sharon, will also be showcased there on that specific conference to talk about, okay, how can we unmute the next generation? How can we involve them in such a significant, peace building exercise, which I think is very important. Sorry, I interrupted your train of thought there. there. I didn't mean to do that. One of the things that really sticks with me, and big compliments to you, is that, okay, there's a conflict. There's often, and then specifically at a young age, when I looked at conflict, I thought like there's not much I can do. These are the big adults doing something that I have no control over. This is about something way bigger than me, and I don't really have a voice in this. And I think it's so empowering that youth now could think like, listen, I'm a victim here, right?
Yeah.
This is about my country, or this is about things that will affect me. So I'm going to make myself heard, and the fact that they find ways to make themselves heard, and if that also is then done for something as beautiful and significant as peace building, then that's greatness in my book. So thank you so much, Sharon, for making that specific difference. Where should people go if they want to find out more about Local Youth Corner? Where should we go? Is there a website that people can go to?
Yes, so we have our website, info Local Youth Corner or loyalcameroon.org.
Okay.
Yeah, Loyal Cameroon. We also have Twitter. We're also on Twitter, info at Loyal Cameroon or Local Youth Corner Cameroon.
Okay.
Yes, those are platforms. We're also on Facebook. You can just type Local Youth Corner Cameroon.
Local Youth Corner Cameroon. That's what you should be looking for. Sharon, Epie, I wish you all the very, very best. Undoubtedly, you have a very bright future ahead of you. Keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I hope to see and hear a lot more of you. Sharon, Epie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, Le Grand Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.